All right, man. Peace. So now much has been made of the Golden State Warriors and their alleged struggles, quote unquote, prior to the All-Star break. They seem to be ready to turn it up another notch, starting with their star, their lead player, no, not Kevin Durant, but Steph Curry. He always has been and always will be their lead player. Some may dispute as to whether or not he's their best player, but as I've always said, to me, LeBron is the best player in the NBA. Kevin Durant is 1A, and Steph Curry would be 1B. I think the difference is that close in regards to impact. I don't think that people realize the kind of impact that Steph Curry has on his team. The way that he can stretch the floor, he totally alters the opponent's defensive schemes because they constantly have to be cognizant of where he's at. And then because of the way that he can dribble, he totally makes the opponent's defense off balance. But anyway, they're going to talk about his uprise as well as the uprising of the Golden State Warriors, and I'm going to chime in.
Cool. But I want to stay on the West Side. The Dubs entered the All-Star break struggling, going 4-4, but they got back on track last night, taking down the Clippers. Steph Curry dropped 44 points and had 10 assists. Max, what did this performance tell you?
Well, before Max answers, I'm going to answer. What his performance tells me is the same thing that's been telling me for the last 3 to 4 years, which is that when he's locked in, he's the most dominant player in the NBA. Not the best player, but the most dominant. Curry can do things when he gets hot from the outside that no other player in the NBA can do in regards to inspiring his own team and intimidating the opponent. It's much like when I was young and Jordan would have dunks that would intimidate the opponent and raise the level of fervor in his own team. Curry does that in this modern day generation. He's turned the popularity of the dunk and converted it over to the popularity of the three-point shot. That's the impact that he's had. He's one of the most impactful players of the last 30 years. There's no doubt about that. What Magic Johnson did for the pass and Michael Jordan did for the dunk and what Shaquille O'Neal did for play in the paint is what Steph Curry has done for the three-point shot in the last 5 years or so. And people are not going to realize how impactful and how potent he has been as a player until he's gone.
Well, Kenny Smith said it all last night during halftime. Guys, here's what it told me. Think about this Warriors team for a second. I'm really just paraphrasing what he said here because when he said it, I thought that's exactly right. Steph Curry is what, Stephen A? What's Steph Curry? How would you describe him?
The greatest shooter to ever participate in the National Basketball Association. I'll answer before Stephen A answers because that's what he is. There's never been a player in NBA history that could shoot off the dribble, could shoot off the catch, could shoot going left, could shoot going right. Floaters, layups with either hand, with the dexterity and the mastery of Steph Curry. Never been one. You've had players like a Reggie Miller who could run off picks and could get as hot from the outside as Steph. You have players like Ray Allen who could dribble, who could handle, who could pull up, and who could also make the three. Players like Dale Ellis, even the great Larry Bird. But there has not been another player like a Steph Curry who could do all those things from all those various spots. Because even Bird was not as proficient from the three until later in his career as Curry has been for the vast majority of his career. He's truly revolutionized the position.
Him?
The greatest shooter I have ever seen.
Me too. That's the greatest shooter in the history of basketball. That's Steve Nash 2.0, a mobile artillery unit whose handles let him get anywhere and whose range is essentially unlimited.
That's an interesting comparison, Steve Nash 2.0. I don't think that he's anywhere near as good a passer and a facilitator as Steve Nash was. Steve Nash was an expert passer. In traffic, along the baseline, from the top of the key, Steve Nash was a passer that was quite non-pareil. Curry is a very good passer, but he throws the ball away too much. He gets a little bit too cool for school sometimes. But in regards to shooting, not even close. Not even close. As great a shooter as Steve Nash was, not even close. Steve Nash was a multiple-time 50, 40, 90 guy. But he made sure that the shots he took, he was going to make. Curry takes wildest shots than Steve Nash ever took. He takes some of the wildest shots in NBA history and still shoots with an extremely high level of proficiency.
As you saw last night at the buzzer beater, I forgot if it was the half or the quarter, where he hits that ridiculously long-range three, and it wasn't a heave, it was a shot. The greatest shooter in the history of the game.
And let me also say that due to his quick release, that also adds another component to the level of intimidation that he inflicts on the defense. It's very similar to Dan Marino back when he played quarterback. Because he could release the football so quick, teams were scared to blitz him. Because if you blitz him and his outside receivers were one-on-one, man-to-man, and they got a step, you had to make sure that you can get to Dan in time. And for the most part, teams could not get to him in time because of his quick release. It's the same thing with Steph Curry. If he gets even a sliver of daylight, he's going to pull the trigger. And it does not matter whether or not he has a long time to see the basket or not. All he needs is a moment. That's one thing that's very underrated about him is his hand-eye coordination. He probably has the best hand-eye coordination in the NBA. And a lot of that is owed to the hand-eye coordination drills that he does, where he's dribbling a basketball in one hand and throwing up a tennis ball in the other hand, blindfolded, bouncing off the wall, things of that nature, to improve his manual dexterity, his hand-eye coordination.
Stephen A., who is basically unguardable because of his handles, is never doubled.
And I've never seen a player in NBA history who takes flings from half court and you expect him to make them. He's the first player in NBA history that has ever had that level of excellence and success from that distance, from that range.
Think about that. He's on a team where you can't double him. So that's what watching that game yesterday, that's what you saw. You said, wait a minute, because of Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green and Steve Kerr's coaching philosophy and offense, that's
the main thing. That's the main reason why you can't double Steph Curry is because of Steve Kerr's philosophy, the way they move the ball around so fast. It's dangerous to even come into a game with a defensive game plan of double teaming anyone, not even Steph, but KD, Thompson, anyone. You can't come into the game saying we're going to double team someone because they move the ball so fast. You're going to look foolish. If you try to double one of their players, they're going to run a cut to the basket. And beyond that, it's not even a matter of whether or not you can double team him because he had his most dominant year the year before Kevin Durant even got there.
You can't send two guys at the greatest shooter who ever lived?
And to be quite frank with you, I think that people are so incredulous about Steph Curry's success because when they look at him, they don't see someone who appears to the naked eye to be that quick, that fast, or that explosive. So fortunately for him, he was able to play a couple of dominant years before Kevin Durant was there because if he had been on the team with Kevin Durant his whole career, people would certainly have went out of their way to say that most of his success was based off of playing with Kevin Durant. So fortunately for him, he has a dossier full of his exploits prior to Kevin Durant getting there. He has a resume prior to Durant getting there, which proves that he can carry a team on his own.
Good luck with that. And that's the reason the Warriors, in the end, will win the championship. They just got too many weapons.
Well, I do agree that they have a lot of weapons, but it's how they use them. When you look at OKC has a lot of weapons also. They just don't know how to use them. And they have players who just don't have the mindset to be the best that they can be and making sure that all their fellow teammates are the best that they can be. This is what I mean when I say that Russell Westbrook plays great, but he's not a great player. He's just not. He doesn't understand the game. And it's not even necessarily him per se. It's just he's played under coaches now for 8-9 years that have always encouraged him to just play natural. And him playing natural is not good enough to win a championship. It's just not.
What it tells me is that.
And beyond that, you have players like Carmelo Anthony and Paul George who've never shown that they have championship level pedigree or that can respond under highly pressurized situations. Golden State has seen everything. They've lived through everything. And their system always promotes maximizing potential.
When you watch Steph Curry get off, somehow, some way, you can find a way to neutralize Curry. Not to say that you can, but there are nights, rare nights, where he's just, I don't know whether he's off or not into it or whatever, because when he's focused, he doesn't miss. The point that I'm trying to make to you is that you look at the Golden State Warriors, and after 3 straight trips to the NBA Finals, and even before then, there are times where you sense a level of vulnerability because of defense, particularly on the interior.
No, I don't see any vulnerability. There are issues with the interior in regards to the center being their weakest position. But fortunately for them, their outer 4 players and even their bench players are so highly skilled that when they decide to fly around on defense, they can make up for whatever they're lacking on the interior defensively. And if JaVale McGee doesn't have a mental breakdown, he can provide the defense that they need. And also, with Boogie Cousins going down for the season, they really don't have anyone to worry about in the West that can dominate them on the inside. Now, in Portland and in Denver, you have Nurkic and Jokic, respectively, who are highly skilled, but they're going to spend most of their time right outside the paint, working outside the paint. They want to show their passing and their point guard skills. So sometimes you can use that against centers like that who are highly skilled. They always want to show what they can do. So they wouldn't have to worry about getting pounded in the paint like they would if they had to go against a New Orleans. New Orleans would have been a little bit of a problem for them if they would have had to face them. Like, say, for example, if they'd have had New Orleans in the first round, OKC in the second round, and Houston in the third round, that would have been a murderer's row for them. So they may have dodged a bullet when Boogie Cousins went down.
Or you have a situation where other guys are not willing to step up and be that aggressor. Kevin Durant is just Mr. Efficiency. Offensively, he's just big time.
I think that Kevin Durant would fare better in regards to what he brings to the table offensively on that team if he worked more in the mid-range. I think that when he goes outside and he takes too many threes, that it takes away from his efficiency and his proficiency and what he can bring, because they really need someone who can work in the mid-range, post up, shoot over his man 16, 17 feet. They already have Clay and Steph for the outside artillery. They don't need him out there.
We all know that he's one of the top 3 players on the planet as far as I'm concerned. He can do what he wants when he wants. But the want to, in terms of giving me the basketball, let me drop 50 on you tonight. Y'all take the night off. It's all right.
Well, you know what? When Kevin Durant drops 50, they normally don't fare very well. When Steph Curry drops in the mid-40s or 50, they almost always win. I can't even remember a game that he scored over 50 where they lost. I think that the last one that I can remember offhand, and one of you brothers, if you remember another game, you can correct me. I remember it might have been his first 50-point game in Madison Square Garden. I'll never forget that. That was kind of like his coming out performance. He had something like 53 points in the Garden against the Knicks. He was hitting unbelievable shots. Unbelievable shots. I think that may have been the last game that they lost. That was way back in 2013 or 2012. I think it was 2013. That was the year where he got robbed from making his first All-Star appearance. And then the next year he made his first All-Star appearance. Not only did he make the All-Star game, but he led the league in voting for the All-Star game. And I believe that may have been the last time that he scored 50 and they lost. That's why I state that for them to dominate, he has to be the lead guy. I think that when KD is the lead guy, Steph gets a little too passive. And I don't trust KD. I think that KD is someone who wilts under the pressure. He turns the ball over too much in big spots, trying to dribble on the outside. I don't care how good his handle is. He's 7 feet. For you to be 7 feet and dribble that much, you're going to have to bring the ball up too high. It gives you the opportunity to lose the ball, the defender to strip you. I remember vividly in the 2016 Western Conference Finals, KD would be dribbling the ball too high, and Iguodala or whoever was guarding him would pick his pocket. That's why KD needs to sit his ass in the post, in the high post, on the elbow, and work from there. Let Steph work on the outside. Steph can dribble. Let Clay work with the pull-up three-pointers. That, to me, is when their offense is at their best, particularly whenever Curry is in the lead. You definitely want Curry to be the lead guy. That is when they're going to have their most success. And I promise you, if Steph Curry is their leading scorer, even if they face a murderer's row of teams in the playoffs like a Minnesota, an OKC, a Houston, and then probably Cleveland, they'll still go somewhere around 16-3, 16-4 at the most.
He ain't that kind of guy. Steph Curry is. And when Steph Curry is that way, there's really no match. When Steph Curry looks the way that he looks last night, just get your broomsticks ready.
Agreed.
Most people are going to get swept right out of there. They ain't going to even win a game.
Because the Clippers played well.
When he doesn't play that way, they'll make it up. I understand that.
Yeah, but who cares if the Clippers play well? They're not going to be the barometer for success for the Warriors. The barometer for success for them will be a game like tonight, where they were able to blow out OKC and show dominant defense. And I knew that defense was going to break OKC down mentally. And you started to see it in the game when you saw Paul George and Carmelo Anthony start to complain. They started to snipe. They started to try to pick fights with the Warriors because they had not seen that level of intensity on defense from the Golden State Warriors. It was a whole different thing. They had beaten them twice, and they thought that that was the best that Golden State could play. And Golden State showed them a whole other level of defensive intensity. And that's truly what breaks opponents down in every sport, is intense defense. It breaks the other team down mentally. You see it in boxing with a fighter like Floyd Mayweather, who just frustrates his opponent with great defense. Whether it's in the NFL, the NBA, when you have a great defense, it breaks your opponent down. Because if you score even a little bit, 2 scores on a team that has a great defense feels like 5 scores to the opponent, because they cannot even visualize scoring on you.
But the Clippers played well, but at the same time, again, you're devoid of a superstar. You're devoid of a superstar. You're devoid of that go-to guy. So in other words, sometimes that's more difficult for a team to defend against, because who's going to be the tonight? Lou Williams is their guy, sure. But some of the other guys, Tobias Harris dropped 22 last night. Oh, don't give me Gallinari. Don't get me started with Gallinari.
He's playing very well recently.
By the way, he needs to lose some weight. He needs to lose some weight.
Yeah, he is a little pudgy, but it is what it is.
Just a tip. Trust me on that. He needs to lose some weight. Point is that at the end of the day, if you're devoid of that superstar marquee guy, then it's difficult to decide, okay, who's going to be the guy that they go to. So, you're just waiting around to see what they throw at you next.
No, what I mean was, I was going to your point, Stephen A.
But
I was going to your point, like when Steph gets hot like that, I'm saying the Clippers played basically not as well as they can, but they played a pretty good game.
No, they played as well as they can. The Clippers played as well as they could, and the Warriors played at about 60% efficiency. Fortunately for them, Curry detonated. When Curry detonates, he's the most potent weapon in the NBA. And one can make the case that it's not even close. I think that Dame Lillard has certain games where he detonates, where he can kind of, sort of come close to an approximation. James Harden sometimes, Kyrie. But when Steph Curry detonates, it's lights out. Now, the greatest streak shooter in the NBA is probably his teammate Klay Thompson. But the thing with Klay is that Klay has to be set up. Steph doesn't even have to be set up to detonate.
They were doing what they could, and when Steph gets hot like that, mere mortals have no shot. But I want to talk about your because this is an ongoing theme that we discuss. I think hero ball does have a place in the NBA. It's Michael Jordan's the greatest hero ball player ever, right? It's not a coincidence. He's also the greatest player ever.
I think that Jordan's the greatest player, but it doesn't have to do with him necessarily being a hero ball player. If Jordan played today, he would not be able to play the way that he played back in the late 80s and 90s. The game's just different. It's actually harder to play defense today because you have to play all the way out 5 feet past the three-point line. Back in the 90s, you didn't play out to the three-point line. Every once in a while, you'd have players like a Glenn Rice, Reggie Miller, who get hot from the outside, and you have to stretch your defense a little bit. Basically just put Scottie Pippen on that player. But now, it's just totally different. It's very difficult to be the leader of a great team and play that style of play, because the shooting overall is so good that you really have to play the style of basketball that the Golden State Warriors play in order to be truly effective. It's hard for one man to beat an entire team now. But what makes Jordan the greatest is the way that he changed the paradigm of winning over from dominant big man, which is what the NBA had been all the way from the 50s into the early 90s. They stated that a wing could not lead the league in scoring and win multiple championships, and he was able to disprove that. And then on top of that, he's one of the top 2 to 3 defensive players in the NBA, even winning Defensive Player of the Year in 1988 at the guard spot. While also leading the league in scoring that year and being the MVP. All those things are what make him the greatest. It's not necessarily the hero ball style. I think that the hero ball style actually hurt the NBA for years because you had a litany of players trying to copy him and they were not as charismatic, and it set the league back, which is why they had to change the rules. The Phoenix Suns came into the NBA, or rose in the NBA in prominence, and were able to bring back that style of ball movement and, being much more watchable. And then, of course, Golden State took it to a whole other level. And in between that, you had the Lakers and the Miami Heat that kind of carried the league for a while until Golden State came with a very beautiful style of basketball. But to make a long story short, I don't think that Jordan's the greatest player because he's the greatest hero ball player. There was a lot more to that.
But I think the reason Kevin Durant wanted to go to Golden State, I think the reason you can't ever double Steph is because that's not really important to those guys. They share the ball. They move the ball.
Agreed.
They're unselfish with the ball. And I think that starts with Steph Curry, by the way.
It certainly starts with him. It was his largesse in moving over for Kevin Durant that made this possible in the first place. Most players on his level, a two-time MVP. We're not talking about a two-time All-Star. We're talking about two-time MVP. So basically, he was viewed as the best player in the NBA for 2 straight regular seasons. And he decided to move over and make room for another MVP level player. Where many players would have stated, no, this is my team. I want to keep my shine. I want to go for a 3rd straight MVP and see if I could tie Larry Bird. And I believe one other player also won 3 straight MVPs. It was either Bill Russell or Wilt Chamberlain. One of you brothers could look it up.
When you have a superstar who's willing to set the screens that he sets and do all the things that he does, it sets the tone. It makes other guys want to play with him. And more importantly, it helps that superstar. That's the reason you can't double him, because the ball's going to move. And because of that mentality, not only has Clay developed and Draymond's become a shooter, because Steph spaces the floor differently because he shoots from so deep, but it also attracted KD. So you're focusing on the fact that he has that thing in him sometimes that just wants to give you the business. Okay, fine.
Well, he only does that when he's hot, to his great credit. He normally doesn't try to force it, which is why he normally shoots in the high 40s. Even before Durant got there, the year that he was unanimous MVP, he shot over 50%, which was the most impressive thing about that season, was that he took the type of shots that he took and shot over 50%. I've said this already. One could make the case that he had the greatest individual offensive season in NBA history. When you look at his size, his lack of outstanding athleticism, and the fact that he scored over 30 points a game on over 50% shooting from the field with the type of shots that he takes.
But the key to me is that none of those guys rely on it, and that's why they're impossible to guard.
The dissertation on that particular issue is not necessary. You can't double Steph because Clay and Kevin Durant are on the floor. It's that
You
simple.
ain't lying.
You could double Steph if he was on the floor with Jaja Pajulia and JaVale McGee. You could double him if he's on the court with a bunch
Send
of
all
those
5 guys.
But if you got Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant, how the hell you going to double him? You can't do it. You just can't do it. But they do. Here's the difference. They'll give the ball to Durant, and Durant will do his thing. Whereas when Steph gets hot, there's a concerted, collective effort to find this man.
Yeah, because he can detonate. He gets hotter than anybody in the NBA. I mean, other than Clay, but as I've already stated, the difference between the two is that Steph actually can create his own shot. If you make Clay put the ball on the ground, 9 times out of 10, he's gonna pass it up unless he can get all the way to the cup.
And give him the basketball. That's different than what they do with Durant.
Yeah.
Yes.
So basically, the bottom line is if Steph's shot is hot, nobody can stop them.
No shit. Thank you, Molly, for that dumbass interjection. But anyway, that's it on the rise of Mr. Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors. I expect them to have a hell of a final run to this regular season and to finish off with a championship as long as everyone stays healthy. But anyway, peace.